And now, to get the evening started, please welcome to the stage Dean Jim Ellis of the USC Marshall School of Business.
Good afternoon. On behalf of our terrific partner in this event, USC Annenberg School for Communication and its Center on Communication Leadership, as well as USC Spectrum, it's our pleasure to welcome you here this evening for a conversation with Ted Turner. Don't worry, folks, we're sure he'll come out of his shell. The world of entrepreneurs and innovators is a place for larger-than-life personalities who can bring their ideas to reality through the sheer will of their passion and enthusiasm. And even in that rarefied air, our guest this evening stands out amongst his peers. As Ted Turner himself put it, if I had any humility, I'd be perfect. Our guest is a case study, literally, in continually reaching the next level, and the next and the next. From his first job as an account executive at Turner Advertising to changing the very way we think about communications itself through the founding of Turner Broadcasting System and CNN, the world's first live 24-hour global network. Our guest tonight is all about impact. Ted Turner not only made history in business, but also in the way that we view philanthropy. He was one of the world's first social entrepreneurs. He shook the philanthropic arena in 1997 with his pledge of up to $1 billion to the United Nations Foundation to promote a more peaceful, prosperous, and just world. He also chairs the Turner Foundation, which supports efforts to improve air and water, develop a sustainable energy future, and develop practices and policies to curb population growth. And if that's not enough, he's also a partner in Ted's Montana Grill, a 55-restaurant chain. His honors are numerous, including Time Magazine Man of the Year and the Broadcasting and Cable Man of the Century. In addition to those titles, let's add one more. As the country's largest private landowner, at last count about 3,000 square miles, Ted Turner can also be called America's neighbor. We have a terrific guide in tonight's journey through the story of Ted Turner's life. Geoffrey Cowan, USC University Professor, Director of the Center on Communication Leadership. As the Dean of the USC Annenberg School for Communication for 11 years, Jeff helped prepare a generation of media leaders and made a profound impact on the richness and quality of our university's public discussion. I'm pleased to present Ted Turner and Geoffrey Cowan.
Well, Ted, I want to start out by saying what a privilege it is to have you here, and on behalf of USC and this generation of students around the world, really, because, you know, we are the most global university in the country. And I want to talk a lot about globalism with you, but thank you for being here. And we're going to be talking partly about this book, a fascinating book about your life as you lived it and as you're continuing to live it. I want to say a word about the rules of the road so all the students here understand what we're going to do. There are microphones in the front on either side, and then there are microphones on either side in the balcony. And if you want to ask questions, about half of the time we'll devote to questions from students. Make them clear and relatively short so that we can then have Ted answer them. I may, in some instances, repeat what you've said. Ted, you are a citizen of the world. And I talked earlier today with Tim Worth, who runs the United Nations Foundation, which you created and fund. And he pointed out that when he or Sam Nunn travel with you anywhere in the world, whether it's to India or to Russia or in the streets of Manhattan, you're like a rock star. People know who you are everywhere. And as I was talking about, I realized the real reason for that, the starting reason, is CNN, which you founded, which really helped to bring the world together. And I'd like to start out with a question about CNN, because here was an amazing invention that you had. But when you think about it, at the time that you created CNN, there was the CBS television network with news bureaus all over the world. There was ABC. There was NBC. And you didn't even have a newsroom. Could you describe what it was that led you to create this amazing enterprise?
Well, when I first decided that I was going to try and build a national network using cable television and satellites. And my first channel was the local station in Atlanta, which was WTBS. I always was thinking ahead, and I said, what would be another format for a channel? Because home box office was already there with new movies primarily. And we were carrying old movies and sports on the superstation. And, I thought about the creation of an all-sports network, which ESPN did. And I thought that was going to have a long payback because the rights for sporting events were so expensive that I didn't see how it could be amortized in a reasonable period of time. But when I thought about the news format, it occurred to me that would not cost so much because you didn't have rights that you had to deal with. You could hire your own news people and start a news network relatively inexpensively. And I just I'd been in the radio business before I got in the television business for a few years, and I studied it too. And I knew that the radio stations, the all-news radio stations in New York and in Washington, and the very large markets, all-news radio hadn't penetrated the smaller markets yet, but were successful. And I just figured, that television, all-news television, would work. But I didn't at the time, and this was in the early 70s. At the time, or the middle 70s, I should say. At the time, I thought one of the networks would do it because they had, as you say, they had the bureaus, they had the infrastructure, they had anchors. But their expenses, they also had outrageously high expenses. They were, like General Motors is today, they were spending about $300 million a year on news to do 2.5 hours of news a day. And I started totally differently. I said, how much can we spend? And I set up a budget of $30 million a year, which was 1/10 as much as their budgets, to do 10 times as much news, 24 hours a day. And we did make that work. We started with a budget of about $30 million a year. And they looked at the costs, the incremental cost of doing it, and it was just too great for them. Also, they stuck their heads in the sand the same way the American automobile industry has done, and tried to pretend that cable was going to go away.
Well, part of what's such a...
But I wasn't going to let that happen.
Well, you certainly didn't. And, as I told you before, reading this book is a little bit for people of my era, an era before mine even, like Perils of Pauline or Raiders of the Lost Ark. There's one adventure after another. You take these things on, and you're at the edge of a cliff, and you're about to fall over the cliff, and somehow you make it work.
That's why I put it down in the book, because it's almost unbelievable, right?
Right.
It's not a business book, it's an adventure story. And one of my favorite sayings is that life is an adventure. And whenever I face difficult times, whatever they are, I say, this is an adventure. And this terrible economic crisis that we're going into now, I'm looking at it as an adventure. I'm going to come out of it somehow. I'm going to live through it. I said I didn't get to live through the last Great Depression. I heard about it. I didn't really want to. But since we're stuck with one, maybe, might as well make the most of it. I mean, because what are we going to do? It could last 10 years. That's how long the last Great Depression did. And if it does, well, tough, The tough will live through it. You got to be like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. Remember when she was eating the radishes? When she got home and when she stood up on the hill and looked at Tara and she held her hand up with that radish in it and she said, as God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again. And that's the attitude you've got to have. Winners never quit and quitters never win. Well, and I'm going to look at it as an adventure, and by God, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm not going to be miserable the last 10 years of my life.
And I guess that's kind of an invitation.
If you can't afford to have a car anymore and drive across town, knock on the door of your neighbors. You never did that. And say, how would you like to play bridge tonight? What's so wrong with that? In the 50s, that's the way it was. I remember when you were lucky to have one car in the family. Remember?
I do remember that. I'm only a few years younger than you are, although I should say that
you look a lot younger.
This is kind of a special occasion for Ted Turner, and we'll talk about that a little later. Tomorrow happens to be, if I got the date exactly right, Ted Turner's 70th birthday.
If you live long enough, you're going to get old. I've learned that.
And you had a birthday party in New York this last weekend.
No, in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, Atlanta. And you spent half the time reciting poetry and Shakespeare and so forth.
Not half the time, a couple minutes. You want me to do one quick one for you?
One quick one, please.
This is a short one.
Okay.
But these are the best lines. There's a half of a chapter on honor and integrity in this book. And the lines that meant the most to me about integrity are from Shakespeare. And they go like this. It's either Richard II or Richard III. My honor is my life, we live in one. Take honor from me, and my life is done. Then pray, my liege, my honor let me try. For that I live, and for that will I die.
And you've done that.
Absolutely. There's been no indictments of Ted Turner, no insider trading or any of that stuff.
Well,
I don't even speed.
Well, that's part of what happened at some point in this business adventure story, and we're going to get to a philanthropy adventure story and other adventure stories too. And not to mention your adventure stories, of course.
If you're going to give it away, why steal it? That's crazy. Oh, Robin Hood did that, though. But he robbed the rich.
But you did, in fact, then get into this arrangement with America Online. And one of the things you write about in your book was that there were at least some people in that enterprise that weren't living with the same level of integrity that you would have.
That's true. And if we'd have known that they'd been cooking the books and overstating their earnings, we could have probably killed the merger and saved ourselves a lot.
Let me ask you one other business question before turning to philanthropy. And again, then we're going to ask students to get into this because we really want this to be an opportunity for students to ask whatever questions they like of one of the great men of the last era and the current era. Ted, today it isn't just the entire economy that's in trouble. In a way, the newspaper business and the news business has preceded it with huge problems. And you have thought of new ways of doing news. You've thought of innovations of all kinds over the years. If you were one of the students out there, and let's say there may be dozens of Ted Turners in the audience today, what kind of advice would you give them if they want to go into this business?
If you want to get rich, go into alternate clean energy. That's going to be the big growth industry of the next 20 years. If we don't convert the fossil fuels, when you stand back and look at them, coal, 200 years ago we started burning coal. Oil, 100 years ago we started burning oil. It was great while it lasted, but the day is over for that. The air quality in the United States is so bad that double the incidence of asthma in kids are what it was. Who wants to breathe polluted air? Plus, we're running out of the stuff, and we don't control the oil. It's controlled. We don't have hardly any left here in the United States. And even if we did, we can't burn it anyway because it's causing too much trouble with the atmosphere. So we need to go to renewable, locally produced energy. And instead of bailing out the auto industry, which is a smokestack industry that's best days are behind it, and in Detroit's case, really behind it, they're so far in the hole building those stupid big cars when they should have been building. I've had a Prius for 7 years, okay? I got the first one. I look ahead, and that's how you get ahead by looking ahead. And you want to see around the corners. You want to see over the horizon what's coming. And that's what, and clean alternative energy is like, I don't know if, there's an older movie now, it was new when I was younger, called The Graduate. And in that movie they said, how are you going to make a lot of money? And at that time the guy said plastics. Right. And 50 years ago, that's right, plastics was a great field to get into. But today it's clean alternative energy. Mark my words, those of you that go into it are going to be on top of the world.
And there'll be huge federal investment in it too.
Well, there's got to be. That's what we ought to do. If the government's got an extra $25 billion that they want to invest in something intelligent, put incentives in, use it for incentives We should be building windmills and solar panels with the workers of Detroit and not these big stupid automobiles. I mean, General Motors is talking about selling Hummer. Ha, wonderful. Why didn't they do it 100 years ago? Huh, Hummer.
Let me talk for a minute about philanthropy.
And I've got one too. But I don't drive it very much. I use it for quail hunting in the desert. That's, you know, and I'm not hunting other people. I'm not hunting Iraqis with it. Then the quail can't plant landmines and blow me up.
By the way, in case, I think maybe Jim mentioned this in the introduction, but you do own 2 million acres of land.
But it's not worth as much as Rockefeller Center, which is only 30 acres. But I've got a lot of desert in there. But it turns out that that's not so bad either, because in New Mexico, where I've got half my land, 1 million acres, of which 500,000 acres is desert, I've still got hundreds of thousands of acres down there that I can put solar panels over, and I'm going to power Chicago. And then the ranches I bought on the Great Plains, it turns out the best wind in the country is on the Great Plains. South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, and I've got ranches all over those places. It's too bad I'm so old, because by the time it really starts making money, I'll be almost dead. But I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to make another fortune to make up for the one I lost. And anyway, I'm excited about it.
Well, it is exciting. It is exciting.
Me and Boone Pickens. I'm good friends with old Boone Pickens, even though he's a Republican and I'm a little more liberal than that. But we're still good friends, and we agree about energy.
I want to talk for a minute about philanthropy, because that's one of your other passions.
Absolutely. When you have to have something to do with the money, to think, hey, what are you going to do with it when you get it? The best thing to do is give it away. Make investment in the future of humanity to those less fortunate than yourself.
Well, maybe we could talk for a minute about some of the things that you're doing with your money. The United Nations Foundation, for example, you created with a staggering gift of $1 billion, at that time about a third of your net worth.
Right, exactly.
Why the United Nations?
Because the problems that we have now, the really big ones like global warming and nuclear weapons, are problems that all the nations share. And we can only do it together. And there's a large group of Americans that are very conservative, and I'm sure they're well-meaning, that are distrustful of international anything. Remember George Washington, when he was president, when he retired, in his last message, warned us to stay out of entangling alliances with European countries. He wanted to keep us out of what later turned out to be World War I and World War II. But you can't do that. The world is interconnected now, and we have to have these international institutions, just like we have to have a federal government. Sometimes it may not work very well, and it hasn't worked very well, in my opinion, for the last 8 years. But we still have to have it, because otherwise you'll have chaos. The countries that are failed states, like Somalia, don't have an effective central government. You know what I'm talking about. You've been all over the world with the Voice of America. We have to have that, and I wanted to show my support for it, and I do every day. I try and strengthen the United Nations, because we will fail without it, and I do not want humanity to fail. If we make the wrong choices, we'll have a nuclear war or environmental destruction so bad with global warming that in 50 years, hardly anybody will be left. We'll all die. And not only will we die, but so will the pandas and the lions and the tigers and the elephants and the birds. And I just don't think that that's really what we want to do. I mean, human beings have been here for 3 million years. It's only been in the last couple hundred that the Industrial Revolution came along, and we were able to, with our technology, which exploded, to build these machines like nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to blow ourselves up. And not only the nuclear weapons are so dangerous. Right now, the Russians have thousands of nuclear weapons pointed at the United States. And we have thousands of them pointed at them. The Cold War has been over for 15 years. Why didn't we disassemble those missiles when the war was over? It's because our government and the Russian government, it's just too complicated for them to figure out how to do. But I can figure out how to do it. You go into a meeting and you all agree to do it, and then you start doing it. You know, you tear the damn things down. And it's true that the knowledge of how to build them is still there, but why would anybody build them? If we get rid of them, anybody with any sanity would not want to build them again. And anyway, we can get rid of them, and I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep working on that, because that's the only way to stop nuclear proliferation.
And that's another of your.
That's the only way, because how can the United States, with a straight face, with 12,000 nuclear warheads on hair trigger alert, look at the Iranians and tell them they can't build 3, when actually we told Israel it's okay to build 100. We let Israel get by with it. We even let Pakistan get by with it. And Pakistan is one of the most unstable countries in the world. We have an unstable country with an enemy next door in India, and I work also on trying to make Indian-Pakistani relations better. And both sides would love to get rid of them now that they've got them, because they're scared to death. They only have a minute's decision time, because unlike the Russians, we're 30 minutes away, ballistic missile time. But 40 years ago, when Dr. Strangelove was made and we had B-52s, we had 6 hours to fly across, and you could recall the planes. The Russians and the Americans' ballistic missiles have no recall buttons. They have no way of, we can't even blow them up in outer space before they get there. Let's assume that the Russians launch an attack at the United States, and the President of the United States finds out about it, and he calls Putin on the phone. Bush calls Putin and says, hey, we surrender unconditionally right now. Please don't send the missiles. Damn, I pushed the button 5 minutes ago. You got 25 minutes. I'm sorry. You know, Jesus, that's crazy. Not only we have designed, invented, built, deployed on hair trigger alert the destruction of the world. Why? Is there anybody in here that hates anybody? When I go around talking to people all over the world, I try and say, is there anybody in here that wants to die? Raise your hand. Nobody does. Because nobody wants to die. Then why have we set this system up to kill ourselves?
Ted, let me talk about another
Pardon me for going on so long.
No, but I want you to have a chance to talk about a number of your passions. World health and malaria. Maybe you could talk about what you're doing in that area.
Well, we're doing a lot in that area, because that's a lot easier than nuclear weapons. People get that, you know, they understand all you got to do is get a shot in the case of measles, and in malaria you sleep under a bed net, and if a mosquito lands on your arm, swat him. That helps you with malaria.
And how about another of your passions is the role of women in the world?
Yes. Half the women in the world still don't have equal rights with men. In the worst case scenario in Africa, the Maasai still do clitorectomies on all the young girls, so they can't enjoy sex, and a lot of them die of infection. They do it with Coke bottles and tin cans. They don't want to spend the money to have it done surgically by a doctor. I mean, it makes me really angry, and I've been over there, and it's just millions of girls are still being mutilated every year.
I'm going to ask one more philanthropy-related question.
I mean, that talk about human rights and talk about cruelty. I mean, what's more unbelievable than that? And just makes me mad to think about it.
And you know, by the way, students can do something about some of these kinds of things. In Senegal, which was one of the countries where female genital cutting was almost entirely all over the country, one woman who had been in the Peace Corps led a crusade to end it, village by village, largely using little theatrical performances. And I think something like half the villages in Senegal now have ended that practice. I want to just ask one other philanthropy question, and then I do want students to come to these microphones and be prepared to ask a good question of Ted Turner. You can see that he has a lot to say. But in philanthropy, you did something else amazing. In the summer of 1996, Maureen Dowd interviewed you. And you told her about your $1 billion gift, which had already been announced. But then you also said something about other people with a lot of money who were getting famous being on the Forbes 400, but didn't get any credit for philanthropy, and so maybe weren't being as philanthropic. And then because of that, as I understand it, Slate created something called the Slate 60 of the top philanthropists, and partly as a result, other billionaires and other people with huge amounts of money have tended to follow suit. Now, first of all, congratulations on that achievement. And secondly, maybe you could talk about what you were thinking then and what you've seen happen during that last decade.
Well, I challenged other wealthy people to be more philanthropic and more creative in their philanthropy. I mean, they're only like 2% of the philanthropic giving in the United States goes to international causes. Other 98% goes to things local. The largest single category of recipients of philanthropy are churches, which is nothing wrong with giving to your church. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the largest. And then education's very high up there. And when you give internationally to measles, you don't have your name put up anywhere. But like the Annenberg School of Communications, Walter Annenberg was a great guy, but and it's a worthwhile endeavor. But he did get his name on it. And a lot of times people get their name on hospitals and new wings on the hospital. Nothing wrong with it.
I just want to say the Annenberg students.
Then a lot of money goes
world.
to operas and the symphony and museums, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I give to museums and hospitals and to education also.
Well, you helped to, I think, encourage Bill Gates to become as philanthropic as he was, or at least to bring attention to these kind of needs.
Well, I like to, what I'm trying to do now, after I did that, I got some negative reaction. I mean, if you do anything, you're going to get criticized for it. And but I'm trying to use carrots now instead of sticks.
I do want to have some people come and ask questions. If there are people up in the balcony, I can't see them. But we want to invite this to be a time for students to ask questions of Ted Turner. So I'd again urge you, if there's somebody up in the balcony, I can't see them, so maybe they could talk up there. Is there a question for one of the balcony mics?
Here's one.
Well, we have one over here. So, sir, you can go first.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Turner. Thank you for being here. My question regards the media, the current state of the media and how it seems to cover stories filled with fear and drama instead of a more progressive and positive outlook on things. And I was wondering what you see that can be done among the viewers, the users of those media outlets, as well as the actual powers that be that control and finance the media operations, such as yourself before.
What can be done to encourage journalists and the owners of media organizations to do the kind of great journalism you did at CNN? Is that a fair summary?
Well, I don't even have any influence, or hardly any, at CNN now. I'm not connected with Time Warner anymore, and.
But what could students do or others to encourage the
I really don't know. There's too much media concentration. A few companies have. We'd be better served if there were more voices. And you want to know why did I merge with Time Warner in the first place? Well, I did it because I was kind of blocked from moving forward. It's in the book, and I also was tired. The one thing that did happen to me, I mean, I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. When I owned the Braves and the Hawks, I went to almost every game, and I watched the away games on television, to even the ones from the West Coast that came on at 10 o'clock at night and went till 3 in the morning. And most people, I went to work at 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and I lived in my office, so I didn't have to drive. And I lived in my office for 15 years. And then at 6 o'clock, when most people go home from work, I had to go over to the ballpark and shake hands, and so I was working till 11 o'clock, and then I'd go back to my office and sleep on my couch. And I did that every day for 20-something years, and I got tired. And when you get tired, your judgment's not as good as if you stay fresh. So one thing I think I said in the book is if you decide you're really going to try and go for it, like if you want to be an Olympic swimmer or an Olympic yachtsman, you have to practice all the time. You've got to give up your whole life to do it, basically. And you've got to decide whether you want to be the jack of all trades and master of none, or the master of one and not so good at the rest. And I decided I wanted to be a world champion in sailing, and I wanted to be one of the best businessmen that ever lived. And I tried to do both, and and I wanted to be a good father too. So it's a lot, and not everybody could do it, but I tried my best to do it, and that news question is really a tough one, because there are a lot of things that are wrong with our system. You know, we were told all our lives that capitalism is just the greatest system in the world, and certainly compared to communism, it is, because communism failed miserably. But there's one real bad failure in the makeup of capitalism, and that's gross national product. And this is something that the news media could point out. GNP, gross national product, means the more business, the more dollars that are generated, the more highly ranked you are. Like China, with an 11% growth in GDP, is way ahead of the United States with 3 or 4%. But they don't tell you, and what's not being accounted properly for, is the destruction of the environment. This GDP is coming. We don't debit the destruction to the natural world, and that's where we're failing. Because if we did that, all of capitalism would be failing. We'd get failing grades, because we're doing more destruction to the planet every year than the amount of extra dollars that we're generating. The rainforest is worth an infinite amount, and we don't value it at all. And that's, capitalism is going to fail. Capitalism is failing right now. Our brand of capitalism is failing right now with a meltdown of our economic systems. I mean, we've done everything right. We had presidents that said, spend more money, it's good for the economy. The only trouble is we spent more than we had. George Soros was on CNN the other morning, and he said the problem is we've spent 6% more than we made on average for the last 5 years. You can't do that forever. You can't do that forever. You can borrow money and spend more than you make for a year or two, but you can't do it forever, because eventually the time comes to pay the piper, and the time has come, and we're going to suffer for it. Today's headlines, Citicorp is letting 50,000 people go at one time. I mean, I never let anybody go. I kept jobs for everybody. I started with 35 people in the television business, and 20 years later I had 12,000 working for me, and I never let anybody go. And some say we're incompetent or stupid, you know.
Let's get another question over here.
Or didn't work. Pardon me for going on so long.
Okay. Hi, I was just curious what you think of Barack Obama, and what do you think he's going to do for our country?
Barack Obama, what do you think of him, and what will he do for our country?
Hooray! I think it's great. I think this is a great step forward. But one of the final nails in Prejudice's column, because if Barack could do it here, anybody, anywhere in the world can do it. You know, it's great for women, for everybody that's been down and out for most of the time. You know, and we're all better off for it. And he seems to be very, very smart. I hope he's quit smoking, though, because we shouldn't have a president that smokes. But he's trying to quit, I know, and I hope he has. Forgot to ask him when I met him. But at any rate, he's going to have a hard job, and let's hope he can do it. It looks like he's going to get some good people on his team to help him. That'll help.
Next question from over here.
Yes, Mr. Turner, I would like to ask you...
Call me Ted.
Ted. I'm Jeremy.
Call me Ted.
I'll call you Ted. Okay, you call me Al. Okay. I want to ask you about a quote that you gave to the Audubon magazine that you've been asked about, but I want to ask you a bigger picture about it. You said a total world population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. Okay, and although I disagree with you in terms of the ends, because I know enough about permaculture and the possibilities of our economy to be based on the sun and plants, That's fair for you to hold that position. However, I want to ask you about the means to a depopulation agenda. Because after 9/11, we had Didi Zucker, who was a former member of the Israeli Knesset, who said that the Institute of Biological Research, a very secret place in Israel, was, quote, trying to create an ethnic-specific weapon in which Arabs could be targeted by Israeli weapons.
Let me try to turn this into a quick question for him.
Okay, I'm almost finished.
What are the means?
Can I finish this up, please? It's just 30 seconds more, sir. Thank you.
30 seconds more.
Okay.
We don't have that much time.
So, and then we also know the Project for a New American Century, the people who predicted 9/11 and actually hoped for it. And we now know that 9/11 was a covert black op done by Western intelligence agencies. And they, in their paper, no, we know this. We know this.
Is your question?
So, the question is, they called for race-specific bioweapons. And so, Mr. Turner, Ted, here's the question. The question is, in terms of this agenda, this depopulation agenda, are you with these terrorists who do their depopulation through illegal wars, false flag terrorism, and bioweapons?
I think you've made your point, sir. You've made your point.
Are you with the foundations of this country's principles that respects the sovereignty and dignity of every individual?
The question, I think, was, you've been such an advocate, you've dealt with questions of birth control or limitations of population.
Not birth control.
Well, population limitation.
No, family planning.
Family planning. So
people
maybe
don't like to be controlled.
Okay, so
they all like planning.
Okay, so how would you bring about, what are the ways in which we control the population?
Totally voluntarily, I think, and I can't remember how many people he said in the Audubon article of 50 years ago, how many people was the ideal population? How many?
250 million, you said.
250 million.
5% reduction, yeah.
After I talked with Paul and Ann Ehrlich, they convinced me that was too few. And they thought the proper number was closer to 2 billion, which is a third what we have at the current time. And if we had a 1 or 2 child families voluntarily all over the world, and remember, 40 countries, in 1950 there were no countries that had stable population. We now have 40 countries that have a stable population or slightly shrinking. And if we had 1 and 2 child families voluntarily all over the world, and if we educate women and give them an opportunity, the high birth rates now are almost exclusively in the developing world. And it's really because the women don't have any opportunity to do anything else. And wherever women have been educated and have equal rights with men, the birth rate falls dramatically, just from a totally voluntary standpoint. And if we did that in 100 years, we'd be back to about 2 billion. Now, the other thing we can do, if we stabilize the population about where it is, another billion or 2 billion people on the planet, we already have over 2 billion people living in abject poverty. The United Nations has a plan, which the Millennium Goals, what the United States has signed on to, but we haven't paid any money into it to speak of as yet. But with the worldwide recession, it's going to be hard to raise the money to eliminate poverty and to build the solar panels. We're going to have a hard time paying for things. That's why I'm worried about our country just printing more money the way we're doing and giving $700 million here and $25 billion. I'm in the restaurant business, and the restaurant business needs bailing out too. Wouldn't you rather bail out the restaurant business than you would the automobile business? I mean, you can get by for the next few years with the same car, but you got to eat tomorrow, Bubba.
Let me get another question.
Let's bail out our friendly restaurant.
Do we have any people up? Because I can't see the people up top.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we'll have a question up here, and if you say it slowly and shortly, so I could try to summarize it.
All right, this is pretty short. Thank you, Mr. Turner, for being here. My name is Alvin Abdul Salahi. I'm a third-year broadcast journalism student here. I was just wondering what you think about Rupert Murdoch and his business perspective compared to yours.
Rupert Murdoch compared to Ted Turner.
Well, Rupert and I had, he a few months back, maybe 8 or 9 months ago, maybe a year, he announced that he was going to make News Corp carbon neutral, and he has all those newspapers all over the world. That was a big job and a big commitment for him. And I'm a big environmentalist, and So I wrote him a letter congratulating him for doing that. And he's 75. He's the only real enemy that I had, that I know of, that had a legitimate reason to, because we had a big fight going on for a long time. And so we had lunch in New York, and we agreed to bury the hatchet. And but I still don't, I don't like his right-wing approach to some things. But I think he's mellowing some, and at 75, I don't think he's a global threat that I did when he was 50.
Is there somebody up here? I just can't see through the lights.
Mr. Turner, my question involves the convergence of three issues that you've dedicated a lot of your life's work to. It's a little complex. Try to be concise, and I have no hostility in my question. So these three issues are alternative energy and global warming, the United Nations, and the nuclear threat. And it seems like the way the world is heading, these three issues could potentially converge in a very destructive way. We have the issue of global warming and oil dependency, which we have to do something about now and today. And in order to do that, one of the best resources we have available at our disposal now is nuclear energy, which is where the United Nations comes in.
Can you sharpen this and make it very short, because we do want to
Yes.
get a few more questions.
I know all about nuclear energy. But go ahead and ask your question, though.
Then we have the IAEA, which is supposed to help third world countries and emerging nations develop nuclear energy, but also police them to keep them from using that technology for weapons. But then if you give them the ability to enrich uranium, if they choose to enrich enough of it, like we're seeing in some parts of the world, then
Okay, so how do we balance the need for how do we balance the need for power with the benefits of nuclear energy?
Well, first of all, I would rather have a nuclear plant than a coal-burning plant. With a coal-burning plant, you know it's going to kill you. And with a nuclear plant, it just might kill you. But the problem with nuclear is it's double the cost of wind and solar and fossil fuel, and you can't finance it without governments. Business won't finance it. But business, if we get a level playing field, right now, the fossil fuel industry has still got all the subsidies at the federal level. Wind and solar and geothermal get nothing. And at the current time, it's just outrageous. And basically, we have nothing going on as a result of it. We have very little is going on in those areas that make sense. But nuclear we still have the problem, which we never have resolved, of what to do with the nuclear waste. And it's dangerous, and it's too expensive. And we don't really need it. But if somebody wants to build a nuclear plant over in Dubai or wherever, more power to them. I'm not really against it. It just doesn't make economic sense.
Next question here.
Hi, Mr. Turner. Ted. I am a journalism major, and the last couple of years we've heard a lot about the changing journalism industry. I was wondering how you foresee journalism in the next 5 to 10 years and how young journalists can prepare for the world out there.
What's the future of journalism, and what should young journalism enthusiasts and people who hope to go into the business do about it?
Yeah, I think the future of journalism is bright, and the old media is losing market share to the internet. That's just something you ought to think about. But I don't think that journalism is going to be anything like the growth industry that clean, locally produced renewable energy will be.
Next question over here.
Hi, Ted. I'm Brandon. I just wanted to make it clear the rest of us here at USC know that 9/11 was a job by evil terrorists that want to destroy our way of American life. But on another note,
did he say eco-terrorist?
No, he's rebutting somebody before. Go ahead.
My hope is that people learn from their mistakes, which leaves me to wonder why people voted for President Bush twice. My question is, over the past 8 years, what do you think we can learn from the past 8 years about what's gone on in the past 8 years? And what do you think the major vices of the past 8 years have been?
What are the lessons of the last 8 years?
I mean, they'd been filling an encyclopedia, but I agree with you. I was flabbergasted when he was elected both times. The night in 1980, I'm close friends with Al Gore. We were just a few hundred votes in Florida away from having him as president, assuming the election results weren't cooked. Some people thought they were. And when he got on TV and announced that he was, that he was conceding the race, I wept because I knew what was going to happen. But more people voted for him. I mean, democracy doesn't always pick the right person. I mean, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany when he was elected chancellor, but in a democratic, Western, well-educated nation. So that certainly wasn't very good, because our administration wasn't nearly that bad.
Is there somebody up here?
Yeah, there's someone up here. Ted, tonight you've talked a lot about philanthropy and collective responsibility. In terms of continuing these efforts, what role, in your opinion, do multinational corporations hold when compared to national governments, given their great economic muscle?
The comparative role of multinational corporations and governments is for the future.
Multinational, what about?
And how powerful and what role do they have compared to the role of governments?
Well, they're getting awfully powerful, but they're also getting more responsible, a lot of them. Like both General Electric and Walmart, the two biggest companies in America, have gone very, very green, and thank goodness. And they're setting a good example, and both of them are doing reasonably well. So I'm just hopeful, because in order to really win these battles, nuclear disarmament, global climate change, we're going to need everybody pulling together. We're going to have to be inclusive. I think it's good that Obama and McCain are meeting and talking about getting a government of unity going here, because we've had too much divisiveness. Because in order to win the environmental battle, it's going to take 80% of the people on the side. We can get by probably with 20%, thinking the world is flat when it's round. But we can't do it with a 51% margin. We can make some progress, but I'd like to set a goal to have 80% of the people thinking straight from now on, because that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to be at our very best for the next 50 years if we want to have any kind of future at all. We've got to stop doing the dumb things and start doing the smart things right now.
Is there somebody up here?
Hey. Mr. Turner, what do you think the most...
Call him Ted.
I must say that more than anything else. If you're under 10 years old, you can call me Mr. Turner.
Ted, what do you think the most appropriate power mix is for the United States? And how do you feel about decentralized power generated from residential attached solar panels?
I like it. I like it all. In order to solve the energy situation, we need to have everything. Everything that's clean, locally produced, renewable. And putting solar panels on your house is a great way to do things. And of course, still, the greatest savings of all is in conservation. I mean, you ought to have the new compact fluorescent light bulbs, and pretty soon we're going to have the IED light bulbs, and they're going to be even better. And insulate your house and do all the other things. Drive a small car, walk whenever you can, and ride a bicycle. It's good for you anyway.
Next question.
Hi, this deals with something that you touched
and eat
on.
at Ted's Montana Grill. I'm just
of
kidding.
course.
We don't have any in California. I'm sorry, young lady.
No, it's fine. This deals with something that you touched on with the girl in front of me, and that was media distribution on the internet. And specifically, I was curious where you see the content created by Turner Broadcasting, like on TBS, and how you see that changing due to the shift from appointment TV towards on-demand and TiVo through the internet.
The way in which programming on television is changing, and television will change because people now get things on DVDs and so on.
Well, first of all, I've got to tell you, I'm completely out of the television business and have been for several years. It broke my heart to leave it, but I really didn't have any choice. And but as far as the future goes, I think you're going to be able to see anything you want, at any time you want to see it. And you can do that really right now if you figure out how to use your TiVo. And that's fine with me.
If you were still in the business, and it's hard to imagine it, but I think this is what so many people are wondering because you've been such a visionary, do you have any idea what you'd do?
If I was still in
If you're still in the business, what would you be thinking of new things?
I'm thinking about things that I have some influence over, like global warming right now and nuclear weapons. And I'm not getting paid by the television industry to think for them anymore. So I'm going to let them do it.
Okay.
I did it for 25, 30 years.
Next question over here.
Hey, Ted.
Yes, sir. Wow.
All right, I'll back off from the mic. Okay. I had two very simple questions. Question number one is, what were you like when you were 20 years old? Question number two is, when you were 20 or younger, did you envision yourself or see yourself as being as successful as you are today?
No. I didn't, but I thought I was going to go as far as I could, as fast as I could. So, but I didn't know where I was going to end up. I was like Columbus, just like we started CNN. When Columbus started out, he didn't know where he was going. When he got there, he didn't know where he was. And when he got home, he didn't know where he'd been. You ever heard that one? You did hear it. Well, anyway, it's still good. I didn't attribute that to me. But this is a line I did come up with. Life's like a grade B movie. You don't want to walk out in the middle of it, but you wouldn't want to sit through it again.
Yours has been a grade A movie, Ted Turner. Question up here.
Hi, Ted. I'm just wondering what you are most proud of having accomplished in your life. And another thing, if you were a college student today, what would you see yourself doing? And what do you think you would pursue from a career standpoint?
Good question. I'm proudest of the success of my 5 children, of all my accomplishments. Of business accomplishments, I was proudest of inventing CNN. And even though the Cartoon Network on any given day will have a bigger audience. And then, as far as my sporting achievements, as much as I enjoyed winning the World Series, in the America's Cup, I was on the boat. With the World Series, I was sitting in the stands. So winning the America's Cup in sports, and the one I'm still working on just to help save the world. So I haven't gotten there quite yet. But I'm working on it.
Next question up here.
Hi, Ted. That's really loud. I am a second-year broadcast journalism student here, and I'm also an Atlanta native. So I've grown up around CNN and Turner Broadcasting Systems, and I also want to say you make a mighty good bison burger. I was going to ask you a media question, but now what I really want to know, actually, is how did you get inspired to acquire over 50,000 bison and become the holder of the largest commercial herd of bison for Ted's Montana Grill? Because, I mean, it's really good.
We have 45,000 because of the drought. But I started with 3, and that's how I learned about population. I did buy 4,000, but that's all. And then all the rest of them came from little babies. If they have one every year, boy, I'll tell you, it doesn't take long to build up that herd. That's why I've got to keep moving them through. We have a little contest. You know, the ones that draw the short straw go to the pasture for the 2.5-year program for meat, and the ones that draw the long straws got to go out and mate for the rest of the time. It's really kind of sad.
We have one last question.
Good evening, Ted. I know you've met probably a wide variety of younger entrepreneurs, and I'm wondering if you could tell us what you see as the most striking difference between your generation of entrepreneurs and the young and emerging group of entrepreneurs. I think
that we're better off today. I love the Google boys. I've met them. I don't know them real well, but I'm big admirers, and they want to get into philanthropy, and they're still in their 30s, so that's really positive. I think we're ahead of the game. I think we've got more young success that are going to be successful entrepreneurs around today than ever before.
Any advice for them?
Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell, and advertise.
And just to conclude with that, Ted, whose phrase was that?
I don't know.
Wasn't that your
mine?
Yeah.
That's the first I heard of it, but I'm not sure he invented it.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was your dad's.
No, it wasn't. There was a radio salesman that worked with me.
We have a surprise for you at the end. Jim Ellis is coming back to join you, which I know you really wanted, and we wanted to recognize this special moment in your life and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
So, a couple of things that we want to give to Ted. First of all, as you all know, in 1977, he won the America's Cup sailing courageous, so we want to give him a USC sailing jacket. Well, thank you.
Thank you. That's really nice.
The one thing that we have that he can't buy is a football team. And so Mike Garrett signed this football for him. Thank you very much. That's from our football team.
Thank you. Good.
And now, if I could ask all of you to get on your feet and let's sing happy birthday to Ted for his 70th birthday tomorrow.
Oh,
and sing loud because I'm not going to, but otherwise I got to keep my day job, okay? Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ted. Happy birthday to me. Woo! Call him Ted.
Thank you, everybody. Fight on.
Okay, which way do we go?